amazing people in the front row that I can say hello to. Happy Expo West. We have people still coming in. I'm glad we have room on the sides and at the back of the room, but come on in. We're excited to see you. You know, this is our 43rd occurrence of Expo West. I'm Carlotta Mast. I am the SVP and market leader for New Hope Network, and we're just so glad to have you all here. We're glad for sunshine planned for this week, and we're expecting just a tremendous show. This year we have more than 3,100 exhibitors, so much new innovation, so many amazing products which you can check out on Beacon Discoveries. So I hope everyone will check out Beacon, learn about the products as you get ready to hit the show floor. And this year we have more than 800 first-time exhibitors. So you'll see tons of new innovation. And we're piloting so many other new things at this show. We've got our first-time buyer-only trade show hour, which starts today at 12 for green badges, and it's in level 3 in the North Hall. So we're excited to give buyers some exclusive time on the show floor with our exhibitors before we open up to everyone at 1 o'clock. We also have so many amazing retailers who are here and doing some cool activations with us. Whole Foods, Kroger, Albertsons, Sprouts, Target, Infra is here in Mass, and so many other buyers. So we're so excited about that. And so many partnerships. This industry is all about partnership. Expo West comes alive with partnership. We've got Naturally Network, Startup CPG, the Adult Non-Alcoholic Beverage Association. We have our first Mindful Beverage Pavilion on level 3, so I hope you will check that out. And it's just going to be a tremendous show. And you know, another thing we're introducing that is new this year is we are doing closed captioning for many of our conference sessions, including all of the conference sessions in this room. So if you would like to access closed captioning on your phone during this session, you can use this QR code and get that all set up. I can't watch anything anymore without closed captioning, so perhaps you'd like to have the closed captioning on your show as well, on your phone. And we're live streaming everything, so if you want to go back and access this content, it will be available to you. And we will be distributing all the slides. There's a ton of data, and we won't be able to speak to all of it in detail, but you'll have access to that information after the session. And you know, our sponsors are really our partners in making every expo special, memorable, helping us bring new programming, new activations to the show. And we wouldn't be able to do that without our sponsors. And so I wanted to offer a big thank you to our State of Natural and Organic sponsor, Acosta Group. Let's roll the video.
Thank you, Carlotta. Good morning, everyone. I'm delighted to be here to introduce our keynote on the state of natural and organic and Gen Z. I know and I'm sure all of you are looking forward to listening and learning from our esteemed group of panelists. I'm Ashley Rome, and I'm Chief Sales Officer at Acosta Group, and in my role, I have the opportunity to collaborate with brand owners and retailers to create plans that will deliver sustainable growth. And natural and specialty brands and retailers are and will continue to be a critical and growing part of our portfolio. As you saw in the opening video, at Acosta Group, we boldly connect brands and retailers, developing modern solutions to market, launch, and sell products anywhere consumers shop. And in order for us to be positioned to deliver on our commitments, it's critically important that we understand the changing dynamics, behaviors, and what's important to consumers across demographic groups, and Gen Z is no exception. This morning's discussion focusing on Gen Z and natural and organic is important to all of us, really understanding what they value, how they get information, and how that translates to purchase decisions. I can say from personal experience, having two Gen Zers in my household, how they shop, how they get information is very different. I can attest that they're very well informed. They understand product ingredients, they value sustainability, they value healthy attributes, and they really value what brands stand for. And it's not just what they value, but it's how they get information. It's been super interesting to me, and it changes all the time. At Acosta Group, we're committed to continuing to learn and understand those changing behaviors. And we've recently launched 2 studies leveraging our proprietary group of about 40,000 members. One of those was around clean label, and one of them was around grocery technology. From those studies, we learned that the Gen Z shoppers are twice as likely to make purchases from their phone. We also know that the majority of them are using an app or a phone in stores to make purchase decisions. Young buyers are way more likely to look for and invest behind clean labels. And a really interesting data point that we pulled from our studies is that 78% of them are actually looking for retailers to provide them information and to help them identify clean label products. That opens up a big door for us to communicate and connect with them. But we have to make sure that we're connecting and communicating with them in a way that's relevant to them. Again, I can say from personal experience, it's not Facebook Messenger, it's not email, and heaven forbid, it's not an actual phone call. The insights and perspective that we'll get from today's panel, as well as what we learn from industry studies like those that we've published recently from Acosta Group, are certainly going to position us well to develop those winning strategies for our brands and for our shoppers. Thank you for this time this morning, and I will turn it back to Carlotta.
Thank you, Ashley.
Thank you.
It sounds like your Gen Zers are with my Gen Zers, and I'm so glad we have this topic because I've learned a lot about how to understand my kids a little bit better. So before we move into our state of natural content, I wanted to share a little information about New Hope's new event, Newtopia Now. You've perhaps heard about that. You'll see a lot of signage, activations around the show floor. But this new event we're so excited about, and it launches in August in Denver, Colorado, and is designed to be the perfect complement to Expo West for buyers, brands, and the full natural and organic and conscious products ecosystem. So let's learn a little bit more. We'll cue the video.
Consumers don't shop the same way they did 10 years ago. So why hasn't your buying experience evolved too? Now is the time to reimagine your product discovery journey. It all begins at Expo West, where you are immersed in the largest collection of emerging and pioneering CPG brands. Then, watch your partnerships flourish in the dynamic atmosphere of Newtopia Now, a new event experience crafted specifically for deepening relationships and meaningful connections with others who share your passion for conscious products. Launching in Denver, Colorado, the hub of the natural and conscious products community, Newtopia Now, where conscious products grow.
So we hope many of you will join us in Denver, August 25th through the 28th for Newtopia Now. And if you want to know more, we will have a Newtopia information session that is combined with a topic that is really integral to Newtopia, this idea of how do you forge stronger relationships, partnerships in an event environment, particularly between brands and buyers, so that you can move past the transactional to get to something deeper that will drive success for both you as a buyer, you as a brand, and also for the greater planet and for what we're trying to accomplish with impact in this industry. You can also, so that session is today at 11:30, just down the hall in Platinum 3 through 4. Would love to have you join us. And you can also, we have a Newtopia Now Airstream because Airstreams are so cool. And that's in the Arena Hall, and there'll be lots of information if you have questions or want to learn more. And we also have a Newtopia Now augmented reality experience in Hall E, in the Hawley lobby so you can actually step into what this new Newtopia will be all about. And we're really celebrating this launch of Newtopia Now as a gateway into the future of our business and trade show events. And our industry has so many things to celebrate. And it's through our own agency as individuals, as companies, as an industry, as well as through our own empowerment. Empower your future is the theme of this year's Expo West. And so I spend way too much time on LinkedIn, but I love our community on LinkedIn. And I just found a few examples of the many things that we have to celebrate. So we've got retailers like Sprouts that they're launching new stores. We've got brands like Lentiful. Ben Bacon was here. He presented in the Pitch Slam yesterday, did an amazing job, and he won the Naturally Bolder Pitch Slam, both the first prize and the People's Prize. Just recently, I experienced that in person. It was amazing. We've got Margaret Coons from Nuts for Cheese, and she's one of many brands that are celebrating their Nexty finalist nomination, and we'll be announcing the winners at our Nexty Awards party Thursday night. It's a prom-themed party, so come ready to have a lot of fun and celebrate our Nexty winners. We've got Jake Delian in his Phila Manila. He wowed the Shark Tank celebrity investors, and he was told, investors told him nobody's really going to embrace Filipino food. They were just floored by how amazing his products are. We've got Infra. I hope we have some Infra members in the room. Infra welcomed 42 new retail members, and this is a sign of the resiliency of independent retail. Honey Mama's one of my personal favorite products that is always stocked in my house. They just closed their Series B funding in an environment where it's really been difficult for brands to access the capital that they need. And in one of my favorite examples, Belgian Boys, they launched a LinkedIn flash mob, and it landed them on a gigantic billboard in Times Square. So these are just a few of the many things we have to celebrate in our industry. And what we're going to talk about today is that our industry is strong. There are headwinds, but we are strong, and we are empowering our own future despite these headwinds. And here to help me present the data that tells our industry story are Nick McCoy, who is the managing partner at Whipstitch Capital, and Catherine Peters, head of industry relation at Spins. So it's so great to see you, Nick and Catherine.
So great to be here.
And joining us in just a few minutes is to help us learn more about Gen Z from their own perspective is Junjo Lee, a food ethnographer. So she'll be joining us shortly. So let's get to the data. And we're going to start with the big picture. I always like to provide this context because it's easy, given the last 18 months that we've had as an industry, where we can lose sight of this big picture. And that big picture is that we are really becoming a force as an industry. We're no longer niche, we are very mainstream, and we have a lot of power and influence. And our consumer sales have more than tripled since 2007 to hit more than $300 billion, according to our Nutrition Business Journal estimates. So our industry continues to grow. It grows through recessions, it grows through COVID, it grows through challenges and all headwinds, but that growth is accelerating, as you can see from this chart. So between 2007 and 2012, growth was we added $40 billion in consumer sales. That growth doubled to $80 billion added between 2018 and 2023. And we're anticipating continued accelerated growth for our industry as consumers increasingly of all generations demand healthier, better for you, more sustainable, more regenerative, natural, organic, and conscious products. And so if we look just at 2023, this chart is so interesting because you can see we've been on a bit of a roller coaster over the last several years since COVID. A big up during COVID as people were in their homes and buying, and then we started to see growth settle back down into more normal ranges. And last year, growth did slow again to about 4.7%, and this was primarily due to unit volume and fewer price increases compared to 2022. We are expecting growth to pick up again in 2024 to about 5.1% this year, and we'll be providing additional context throughout this presentation as to what will be driving that growth. And from a category perspective, nothing has really changed. For a long time, natural, organic, functional foods and beverages have been the largest share of our industry, followed by dietary supplements and then natural living, which includes beauty and pet care, personal care products, household products. And if you look at industry sales by channel, this is another really interesting story for our industry. And e-commerce sales spiked. We all know this story, spiked during COVID, and it's not surprising. We were all kind of relegated to shopping from our homes and doing a lot more buying online. But e-commerce sales slowed pretty dramatically in 2021 and 2022, and then began picking up again in 2023 to make e-commerce last year the fastest growing channel once again. So it's important to note, despite all of this growth with e-commerce, that brick and mortar retail is still by far the dominant driver of sales for our industry. And e-commerce only makes up about 8% of total sales, while the mass market channels are really where the vast majority are rung up. And this is why we're seeing many non-shelf brands now focus on migrating to the right retail shelves. So they're moving from D2C to retail.
So not only do we have this tailwind of natural products growth that Carlotta's been sharing, natural products are also outpacing the sales of all other products. If you take a look at this chart, this is all outlet panel data. So this means everywhere people buy, online, in stores, et cetera. The orange line represents non-natural products. The purple line represents the NPI, the language of our industry, natural products. And what we see historically is that that purple line is outpacing growth. In other words, natural products have continued to accelerate. But let's think about what was happening around mid-2022. Difficult financial market. Prices were going up like crazy. We saw mainstream product sales boosted literally by the inflation, by the price increases. We also saw consumers having to make some tough trade-offs. Some are having to shift to conventional brands or private label. We even saw a lot of industry outsiders, think about, again, this scenario about a year ago, that were saying, did natural hit its peak? But guess what? We sat up on the stage, we talked about the optimism, even with what was going on at that time, and we said, this is a resilient industry. We have the agency to continue to change and make the difference. And indeed, really exciting, if you look at Expo East and ever since, natural products are back in the growth engine again, ahead of all other products. So super exciting, and we really see this is back to the continued trends that's gonna remain straightforward, or continuing forward. And we also see it across all the channels that we track. As they say, a rising tide lifts all boats. We're gonna hear a lot about this from Gen Z, that it's really going to be a rising tide. But we see the different channels sort of play a different role in how consumers shop. And we see natural products are outpacing the total channel consistently. We also see, which is great, specialty and wellness products are also now kind of the next part of out of the bullseye, which again just tells you this macro trend of consumers focusing on health and planet. And the biggest barrier we always see in research is accessibility and price. And specialty and wellness products being so strong also are helping really to show that we're bringing great choice. Next. And then organics. Again, I think, a while back during some of the tough inflationary times, the prices were going up. People were worried of what's going to happen to organics. Thrilled to say this morning, organics are outpacing non-organics across the store as well. Super fantastic, both in dollars and units for all you naysayers who are like, well, what about units? So it is outpacing and better in dollars and units. You can see just a few categories here as examples. The way to read this is organic soda has a growth rate 121 points higher than non-organic soda. What we see here, if you look at this list of categories, are ones that traditionally might not be thought of as heavy organic. So it's great to see, again, organics are just growing everywhere, and it's because shoppers trust organic. In fact, if you look at sentiment since 2019, organic and non-GMO have the strongest consumer mindset and comfort and trust. And we particularly see not only are all shoppers starting to trust and look for organics, the younger shoppers, as we're going to hear a lot more about, really trust this seal.
And so at the category level, again, natural, organic, and functional foods and beverages, they drive the vast majority of industry sales. And last year, this category outperformed the total industry with 5.3% growth. And our snacking habits as Americans, snack categories are some of the hottest, as well as globally inspired condiments. Condiments continue to be a really surprisingly hot category, and that's what's helping to drive the growth in this category. And then dietary supplements. This is, of all of our categories, the one that has had the most up and downs over since the pandemic, but is still benefiting from a pandemic bump. And last year proved to be a better year for supplements, thanks in large part to the muscle that sports nutrition is adding to the supplements category. And we are expecting to continue to see strong growth in supplements this year, and there'll be a session right after this session, the State of Supplements, where you can dive really deep into what's happening in the dietary supplement space.
Carlotta had mentioned the headwinds that we faced over the last couple of years, and one of the big reasons for that is a return to normalization after the impact of COVID. COVID drove everybody into the grocery store and out of restaurants. You can see in the line, food spent basically for home eating spiked when COVID happened. And it's taken about 3 years for that to unwind and return to normal levels of restaurant spending. In fact, now, if you look at the numbers, we're at 51.8%. That's below the long-term average of 52.6% spending at home. We're actually spending more at restaurants now than we did before COVID. What this did is it caused a unit volume decline in grocery stores in the last 2 years, 2.5% in 22, 2.1% in 23. That's like the tide going out. That's affecting everybody in this industry. It's affecting the big companies too, especially when they struggle to get points of growth. The good news, the clouds are parting. In January of 24, this first spins quad I saw in MULO with positive year-over-year unit volume growth since COVID started. So this is good news. Doesn't mean it's going to be every quad, but this is the sun peeking through the clouds.
So while there's certainly some bright spots on the horizon, we know consumers are still really frustrated about high prices. It's all over even TV now. We heard it at the State of the Union last week. It's become a political topic as well. So consumers are frustrated, and that's putting a lot of pressure on brands and retailers. There are some of the costs coming down in the system for brands, and so retailers are putting a lot of pressure to start bringing price down. But brands aren't necessarily quite ready yet to really bring their costs fully down. And so we see this pricing trifecta, as we've said, that you've got everyday price increases slowing. In other words, prices aren't going up much more, but they're still higher. And then you see dollars on promotion going up because we're giving a shot in the arm with promotion rather than everyday price. And we see discounts are higher. That's a tough environment to operate in. And so we see it's going to take some time for these pressures to really release. And so we're going to continue to see throughout 2024 a lot of focus on promotion and how do we get in a place that we can improve price perception. And honestly, a lot of stress between retailers and brands on how to make that work effectively. And again, as a result of some of these pressures and the continued economic environment, we're seeing brands bringing less new products to market. Super important. Fewer new products does not mean less innovation, and I feel very confident we're going to see that in the halls this week. But what it does mean is that brands are evolving, and they're really having to focus on profit. You're going to hear more about this from Nick, or profitability, being smart, I should say, smart, disciplined quality. So they can't afford to make any misses with brand launches. It's no longer just get out everything you can. You have to be incredibly disciplined and look for where you have a right to win, differentiation, adjacencies, and white space. So the game is really changing, again, as Nick's going to talk quite a bit more about.
I think it's important to take a step back with all of these things flying around here, inflation and COVID and all of this, and look at what is truly driving essentially the attention and growth of our industry. And at the end of the day, we can have all of that, but the consumer is voting with their dollars to buy innovative products. They're voting for independence. So what we did is we took the SPINS database and we basically cut it methodically to take the strategics, or essentially larger companies. We looked at basically ownership, number of brands and size, and independence. And we split it into two. And then we just decided to look at year-over-year growth for 2 years ago, this year, in both units and dollars. And in every one of these 8 cases, you can see that the colored bar exceeds the white bar above it in terms of growth rate, particularly in NPI. NPI is short for the Natural Products Index, or that is essentially the 10% of SPINS companies or SPINS revenue, which is more healthier for you, better for you. This is very encouraging because dollars are what drive growth. So everything else aside, this is positive going forward. Okay, another thing to think about is, in perspective, this industry has basically grown from 20 years ago when I started going to Expo to a very nascent niche industry to something that is now actually a mainstream thing. We have a fully blown out financial system. Brands are much bigger. This show is much, much bigger. We started with, 10, 15 years ago, companies with 10 million in revenue were getting bought by big strategics. And they were getting bought in competitive processes. Well, the number of companies has ballooned. And as innovation has grown and become essentially part of the grocery store, now it's about 100 million in food and beverage and things. And the great news is we've had private equity step in and break their rules and buy companies before they're not profitable and recycle liquidity to investors at an accelerating rate. That's one of the other headwinds, is higher interest rates has made private equity funding slow down a little bit. And interest rates are falling and we're seeing funds close, so that's great. So profit is one of the key things here. As we mature, just like every other mature industry out there, profit is what drives value, and it's more and more important for us. What are the key enablers? Increasing integration of supply chain, asset light or heavy, omni-channel to increase the brand headroom, marketing efficiency using data. Data has gotten so strong in this, and it's really great for both internal marketing, for investors, everything. I highly encourage it. And we have a greater number of rising tides, or things that push revenue up without effort. We'll talk more about those. So looking forward, what does this mean? Well, if we look at it, thinking about 2030, we have a fully fleshed out capital market system now. We have large and small venture funds. We have buyout funds that can buy brands ahead of large strategics. We have consistent M&A by large strategics, who, by the way, bought last year, even with the headwinds, at consistent levels with the last 20. We have an IPO market in 2021. I can hardly count on one hand the number of IPOs in the last 20 years. Before that, conscious products have become mainstream. They used to be a section in the grocery store, and now they are the grocery store. We have 3 successful business models that you can do. You can get bought off of EBITDA with profitability. You can grow and still get bought off of a multiple of revenue for fast-growing revenue companies. And now there's also attractiveness of multi-brand companies getting bought off EBITDA. And we have some of the best rising tides, or essentially tailwinds. We have sustainability. We have wellness, social responsibility, and appeal to a multicultural customer base. Things that make the planet better, make people better, and we have the consumer voting dollars to drive these tailwinds to help grow our brands to make the world a better place. So, when Expo ended last year, I don't know if anybody remembers, but Silicon Valley Bank was in the process of failing, and it was a down time. And I heard a lot of negative energy around that. I actually heard people making statements like, well, next year at Expo, there's going to be 25% less companies. I heard that statement made by more than one person. So I'm really pleased that this year we actually have 100 more exhibitors on the floor, which is great. And when Carlotta was talking about new exhibitors, it's not because exhibitors failed. That 800 number is very in line with historical percentages. So this industry continues to grow despite all of that. Summing it up, independent brands are driving growth. M&A is accelerating, especially as interest rates come down and confidence goes up and this unit volume decline stabilizes. And with restaurant volume up, we're going to win both ways. If we get a little bit of a recession, people leave restaurants and they cook more at home. If we have a buoying economy, we're going to return to normal just as a normal course when you look at the line historically. So the fundamentals are very, very strong looking forward to 2030.
So that's a good look at what's happening sort of in the industry and is from a macro. Let's look a bit at the evolving consumer mindset. There are really 4 key macro trends that are really showing the progress that we're making as an industry, and these are trends that are going to be here to stay. We would really say that there's going to be some fads within some of these, but chances are successful brands are going to fit into one of these macro trends because it really is the shifting of how consumers are looking, and the younger consumers that we're going to talk further about are even more so engaged. First, lifespan to health span. Used to be, we were looking at how do we just manage our health condition, or how do we focus on aging a little bit in a better way than before. But now we're focusing on longevity, looking at our personalized approach to it. Everybody has their own recipe or formula. New global notions, as Nick mentioned, it's no longer like an international aisle in the store. Now blending is ordinary and there's flavor adventure everywhere. Indulgences, it used to be viewed negatively in some ways, sort of polarizing, and it was kind of mindless. And now we see, again, there's intentional choices around how I want to indulge. Again, it's part of my brand, my personal brand. And it's so gratifying. Many of you who were at Climate Day yesterday, certainly sustainability, which might have, it's still catching up as being a primary driver in CPG purchases, but boy, is it catching up fast. And we see it's really becoming table stakes. And it's really moving and growing into this movement of regeneration. So let's dig a little bit more into a few of these.
Yeah, health span, I think, is one of the things that's going to drive a tremendous amount of volume in dollars between now and 2030 and probably beyond. Outlive, the book, has been on the bestsellers list for months now. You've got the Blue Zone documentaries, You Are What You Eat. People are more and more conscious about not just how long am I living, but how long am I living well? The definition between health span and lifespan is essentially, health span is the number of years you live where you're not inhibited by some kind of chronic disease. And the gap is about 9 years. Between that and actual lifespan. And people are doing things, changing their diets and everything. You look at these documentaries in the book, it's food, it's wellness, it's community, it's exercise, all of that. Those are all things that drive purchases in this industry, because even things like exercise and community all involve food.
So if you think about this idea of health span, and again, how it's becoming integral to each of us is our personal brand. Nick mentioned some of the ways that we're learning. It's no longer you're going once a year to the doctor or you're Googling on WebMD. We're watching podcasts. I mean, half of Americans have watched a podcast this year. There's books, there's Blue Zones. There's just this revolution of how we're learning about health and then making actionable changes in our lives to improve this long game idea. We see saunas, we see cold plunges. I mean, how many of us are wearing devices that are tracking our sleep while we're here and telling us if you're going to have a drink of alcohol, maybe it's better during the day instead of at night? Just kidding. That's what the Whoop podcast says. I'm kidding. Certainly even urinals are now, and I was just kidding, I promise. Even the urinals are sometimes now measuring hydration that you see in locker rooms with red, yellow, green showing how hydrated you are. And obviously reverse osmosis, you name it. And then we see people putting these extra elements in their lifestyles too. We see a reduction of alcohol. We see protein not only being good for physical health, for mental health. We see this wonderful invasion of improved women's health products on the market as women are finally reaching higher positions of decision making in companies. They're saying these products aren't built for the needs I have in my life stages. And so we see those products coming forward too. And with this impacts our industry because consumers say the food, the beverages, the supplements that we ingest play an outsized role into the incorporation of wellness in our lives. And shoppers at every generation, according to some recent New Hope research, are turning to these products instead of pharmaceuticals. You can see here, typically what could be considered indulgent categories like snacks and beverages really are having so many different functional ingredients added to them to improve a variety of health focus areas. So let's then look at beverages a little bit deeper, and they're one of the new mechanisms of action. We see functional ingredients are really helping anxiety, mindfulness. I mean, in fact, who would have guessed the hottest beer on the market has no alcohol in it? I mean, it's amazing. And you can see that the day part is now becoming intentional. We're changing, maybe it's our coffee routine, so that we're adding another way to get an intentional functional improvement there. We're looking at that window after work when we're looking for relaxation. We see a number of products that are being added into new non-alcoholic beverage choices. We even see THC, the hemp-derived THC that we can track that's legal everywhere, is just going crazy as to how many, even Total Wine is carrying it now. So again, consumers with this focus on health span are really being intentional. And then finally, I won't dwell on this, the jury's still out on what's really going to happen related to the GLP-1 medications. You can see there's a whole mix of different headlines here. Some consumers seem to move towards healthful eating alongside it. Others kind of think of it as a magic bullet. They forget they're not going to be on these drugs forever, but they're still making choices to maybe eat unhealthy. So the jury's out a bit, and something though that's very much going to shape our industry going forward. So many, many trends underneath this health span. If there's any key thing particularly to walk away with, is to think of this idea of longevity. New global notions. You're going to hear quite a bit on this as we talk about listen to June Joe on Gen Z, because we see that with this, from the home cooking, people start experimenting with new flavors. There's increase of popularity of global foods outside of traditionally ethnic restaurants, blending of formats and flavors. Again, just this incredible mixing pot. And we see brands like Omsom and Momofuku that we're going to hear from later in the panel redefining what it means to be an authentic brand. They're no longer pigeonholed under one sort of flag in the ethnic aisle. They're proliferating across many different products and categories. And we also see different countries, driving things non-traditional. Olives, we know lots about olives, but no one's thinking about Tunisia olives, who has special varietals, or their polyphenol levels are higher because of some of the desert sand it's growing in. Think about dumplings. Some people have a very tight definition of dumpling, but to the experimenting customer, dumpling means a lot of things, and we need to embrace that. Bao buns are rising in popularity, as well as steamed dumplings. And then finally, it's not just taste buds, but it's demanding change. And again, this young lady, if you're not familiar with the story of how she single-handedly started the battle to get bromine out of Gatorades in the United States because they were banned in Europe, she's amazing. She's the definition of agency that Gen Z represents in how they're going to change the world and certainly change our industry. And then indulgences. Again, this is another place that we're creating extensions of our personal brand, whether it's the culinary culture, picking the foods that represent who we are, whether it's, and you can see some great brands here, or great different kinds of flavor profiles, whether it's traditional nostalgic eating, categories we had walked away from, like pancakes or soda, all of a sudden, Kodiak bringing in high protein, and Kernza, which has just exploded onto the scene, Poppy with apple cider vinegar and probiotics. It's changing. We're coming back to these comfort foods and having some indulgence. And finally, regimens. Lots of news in beauty care on, no longer you take your teenager to Dairy Queen, you take them to Ulta for their new 5-step process, right? And so again, this is very intentional, and it's also linked into a lot of the health span and healthy aging. So indulgence is definitely a fantastic way to continue to express your brand. And again, sustainability, it's such a growing area of interest. Consumers want to be able to make the connection between climate change and global warming and the foods they buy. But they're still a little confused, to be really honest. And so this is an area, and super excited about all the work that Gabe Brown and many are doing on this front you're going to hear about. But it's how do we help the customer understand the differences that will impact our planet and climate in a positive way. Organic, really, I would almost say in some ways like the regenerative movement, which is going to become table stakes, is where organic was 15 years ago. So we do still have a lot of work to do. Upcycled, a lot of people don't understand what upcycled is yet. It's gone from people maybe hiding it, not putting it on their package because it was like secondary ingredients, to now being something that's touted. And so you can see even some mix in consumers trying to figure it out, and what we see in the sales data. And then to wrap that up, sustainability, we do see, again, consumers are going to be increasingly looking for sustainability in all the products that they buy, and retailers are making some significant commitments. Let me finish the next slide. Significant commitments on this front. So it's great that they are really looking for brands that can help them meet these commitments. So this is a great story for many of you in this room, whether you're retailers or brands, to do some matchmaking. And again, Beacon is a fantastic platform for that. But this is going to, again, become table stakes. So now let's shift into talking about Gen Z. This is really going to be a lot of the headline of our future. Again, this is a new generation of demand and expectations. Younger consumers are going to be the change. They recognize their empowerment and that they have the agency to do this. By 2030, which is right around the corner, the Gen Z consumer is going to be starting to get close to about 20% of buying power. That's growing fast, and that's still the early part of their years. In fact, by that time, the Zennials, in other words, the millennials and Gen Z together, are going to be representing somewhere around 50–60% of buying power. And that's just the start. They're the first digitally native generation, and they are going to change in the world. So let's dig into them a bit.
Yes, so we'll tell you what the data says and what Gen Z has told us as part of our surveys, and then we'll have our food ethnographer, June-Jo Lee, join us, and we'll hear directly from Gen Z. But we wanted to better understand shoppers of different generations, all generations. So we worked with our partner, Suzy, to survey more than 1,000 natural and organic food and beverage shoppers. And when asked about the product attributes that matter most to them, Gen Z, not surprisingly, said the attribute of convenience was most important, followed by clean label, price, product transparency. Those were most important to them in this survey. Now, while sustainability and environmental and social responsibility related attributes were important, they were ranked lower than those. What is so interesting, when we asked about certifications, Gen Z, of all the generations, had the least attraction to certifications. They're not looking to certifications and when they're making their product choices as much as other generations perhaps are. But the one certification by far that has the most pull with Gen Z is organic, certified organic. And that's true for every one of the generations. And I think that speaks to all of the work our industry has done to educate consumers on the benefits of organic. We still have a lot more work to do there. And Organic Voices, along with the Organic Center, are having a big event tonight. It's sold out, which is amazing. But the fundraising that will happen as part of that event is going to fuel more of that education in the future. And then, when we look at clean label, we've mentioned that a couple of times. So while Gen Z might not be paying attention to certifications on their label, they are looking at ingredients. And compared to every other generation, they place greater importance on products that have a clean label. So this speaks to the opportunity we have to reach these shoppers with our types of clean products.
There's a lot of really interesting things as we dig deeper into the data on Gen Z. We took a look at the Nielsen IQ OmniShopper database and looked at basically their expenditures by channel and retailer. And when we summarized the data out, what we found is they actually spend less online when indexed to the other generations, which seems like a total surprise. But when you think about it, this is a generation that had COVID as a defining moment. They were locked in the house with their families for 3 months. And I don't know about you guys, but I think we probably made about 50 different versions of an evolving chocolate chip cookie recipe, and my neighbors ended up being the beneficiaries because we could never eat them all. But the kids are engaged in their cooking, and so they've taken a love of cooking, and that shows because they need to go into the store to actually shop for the ingredients. They like that. Next slide. Right now, Gen Z is basically where millennials were in 2006 when you match up the ages. They are coming into the consumer buying power with full force. So you're seeing the growth of their dollars wildly outpacing others. And just like in 2011, 12, 13, 14, when people are saying, hey, my customer is millennials and millennial moms, 4 or 5 years from now, we're going to be saying that about Gen Z. It's a very powerful force. Next slide. Empathy is really interesting. This is a generation that grew up getting taught about the UN Sustainable Development Goals in school. So, where does their empathy come from? It comes from there. And where does it translate into? It actually translates into their dollar purchases. Cruelty-free, humane. I mean, these are things that are over-indexing double the other generations. On the clean label side, it's actually interesting. When you dig through with the components of clean label, it's very consistently free from chemicals. It's, things like gluten and things do not over or under index. But when you look at, things like chemicals and things like that, very strong. They like to show up. They show up looking well. They're on social media all the time. And they're seeing, image on social media. They're seeing tips on beauty and things. And that also shows when you look at personal care and grooming. Again, way over-indexing. And lastly, they both over-index in plant-based and protein, which I think is very interesting when we think, longer term about, where's plant-based meat and plant-based liquids going? And, is there going to be a resurgence? Well, the only way that you're going to get that much protein in veganism is by figuring out more on that plant-based meat and liquid side. So it's super interesting.
Yeah, so that's the data on Gen Z. Nick, they also get their empathy from mama.
I second that.
That's the data. And now we're going to bring June-Jo Lee up to the stage to share the story of Gen Z from them. And so thank you, Nick. Thank you, Catherine. And let's welcome June-Jo Lee.
All right, go for it. Thank you.
Hi, my name is June Jolie, and I am a food ethnographer. In 2018, I started a longitudinal Gen Z food life cohort study to see the worlds they were making and making themselves ready for. I don't have the clicker. Thank you, Carlotta. So why do I care so much about this work? It's because of my son, Blue. I love him, and I almost lost him. Blue was born in 1998, and by high school, he had stopped talking to me. And I was afraid he would turn out like his biological father, a paranoid schizophrenic. And in 2018, I got the phone call. Mom, I'm not doing so well. I need your help. And the only thing I had to save my son was this work, my ethnography. You see, I was a Korean tiger mom. I thought being a mom meant show them the way, tell them what to do, who to become. That's how I was raised. I never stopped to ask Blue, who are you? What do you want? Who do you want to become? And Blue told me, Mom, I'm exhausted talking to you because you think I'm in your head. And he said, why don't you just treat me like your ethnography? Ethnog me, Mom. And so I did. Blue told me he feels like surfing. He feels like learning to surf. Being Gen Z feels like learning to surf. You feel like you're just about to fall off the board, crash into waves, plunge into the ocean, not know if you're up or down, not able to breathe. But he said, maybe someday I'll master surfing. So what do you do in a world where the ground is no longer the ground and there are no more guardrails to hold on to? This is the story of Gen Z. So who are they? I'm a Gen Xer. I think many of you may be Gen Xers and millennials. They're the children of Gen Xers, born between 1997 and 2012. They're the largest generation globally, and in fact, greatest proportions come from hot countries, Nigeria, Pakistan, India, and Indonesia. By next year, 27% of the global workforce will be Gen Zs. So they're not just your consumers and your shoppers, they're also your employees. And in the US, they're the greatest diversity we've seen so far. And they're also the most college educated, which means their food lives are expansive beyond their first family food traditions. So my research is really simple. Year over year, I ask Gen Zs, tell me what you're eating so I can see who you are. And if we can see who they're becoming, we'll also know what they'll be eating. So I think Carlotta and Catherine and Nick took you through the data. We're starting to see the emerging data of what they're eating. So this is the story of who they're becoming. For Gen Z, digital food life is nourishing. Tui told me in 2018, we're the same age as Google. We've never known a world without search or maps or even YouTube. And she said, this isn't even my dog. He's a Korean dog I found on Instagram. But he's so cute and fat, and I love him. And when I'm feeling anxious or depressed, I'll just watch videos of this dog. Digital is an essential flavor And we'll see that play out. Social suffering is a shared condition. Prudence told me, I feel like crying all the time, but I don't have enough tears. And I love her thrifted Care Bear sweatshirt. You see there's a Band-Aid on her heart. And in a lot of ways, I think we broke their hearts. Let's see. Sorry. So this generation is feeling everything. They might not yet know how to articulate what they're feeling, but they are sharing it with each other. Overthinking hurts, but oversharing relieves. And food, textures, flavors are emotional medicine. They have a wide margin of error, so they eat a lot of gluten. They love carbs. Gluten is foods that bind us. Cute fats are foods that keep us warm and comfort us. They also love spicy foods because it wakes us up. They're third culture kids, and so they're the first internationalized youth generation. They're mixed and hyphenated, and it's not just only their ethnic identities. They're also open and hybrid, non-binary, queer by default. They're really exploring who they are. They have very fluid and creative identities. And if food is what we eat, their food is also very creative and very fluid. No change is kind of boring. So I'm Korean, and I learned about a band, a K-pop band called BTS from Regina in Kyle, Texas in 2019. She said, BTS saved my life. And let's hear what else she says. Roll video.
I'm really into a band, BTS. I had gotten into K-pop after I had gotten into anime because the songs are awesome. They're all very true to themselves. Literally everything I liked, K-pop, anime, art, all of that would not have been possible if I didn't have access to the internet. There is a difference between an online persona and an real life persona, but they definitely mix. Like, it's all the same person.
It is nice to be surrounded by people that you can kind of laugh and joke with. We always have dinner together, so like being able to like cook together is really important to me.
I'm a big fan of breakfast, but also like Asian food in general. Korean barbecue style kind of cooking where like they have everything laid out and then you just cook it in front of you and you enjoy it like very shared meal kind of style, or even like hot pots and just like large serving sizes of things that we all then pick from and cook actively. I love that.
I don't like wasting food. I don't like wasting resources. The worst thing that could possibly happen is we don't change and people still not getting enough.
After working that desk job in Austin, I realized I need interaction. I very much thrive in being able to do that. I obviously love Texas. I grew up there. And I've got spaces that I really like and areas I'd be willing to move to. So I've got that. I'm working with a whale tour company out in Juneau.
So back in 2019 in Kyle, Texas, when I was talking to Regina, she ended our conversation by saying, life just keeps on peaking. And then a couple months later, boom, COVID hit like bad weather. And so this generation, they're tagged by a global pandemic. They entered adulthood learning in solitary confinement and living on a terminal timeline. For Luis, tacos are family, tacos are friends. Tacos are hope for Luis. Roll video.
It's like the epitome of like what it means to be Mexican. Now it's taco with beans and meat and cilantro and onions and sweet lemon on it. That feels like culture. It tastes authentic. It tastes real. I feel like really, I guess proud, honestly, like that my culture could make something so delicious. Because it's from my mom's hometown. This is from where we're from. For me, I'm on a scholarship. So when you're getting paid to do academic work, I think you're obliged to make certain sacrifices, and that's my job here. I never imagined to get this far. My Stanford email is literally like just my last name. The fact that your email is just your last name, like I'm the first Sanabi here. It means a lot to me. I want to put my family on the map. I'm here to learn, enjoy everything I can, both the good and the bad. You could go on forever about climate change and war and COVID and people dying. So I think it's impossible to not be worried. I personally feel like climate change is inevitable. There's no way money-hungry people are going to stop being money-hungry. And people are telling you, dude, like all the carbon's already in the atmosphere. It's at an irreversible level. It's demotivating.
Here we are, Saturday night with the friends. In and out, greasy fast food, makes me feel good. My stomach, not so much. Friends, I love it.
So I think we can see why friend groups are their social infrastructure. It's their essential life support. It's the key driver of everything they do. Huijin and Hui, in Seoul, Korea, Huijin told me, you know, COVID was a disaster. I was a disaster. I was so depressed. But then she went on and say, food is family. It makes instant family. So even if you don't know how to cook, you can make instant ramen for your friends and they can feel your love and care. And in fact, for this generation, cooking is a sign of well-being, especially when you're cooking for your friends. It's also a tool they use to feel better when they don't. They are fully hybrid, and these are steamed corn mushrooms. I don't know if anyone knows that. I don't think they're quite edible, but just like mycelium networks, they are multiplying and integrating connections to people, place, and the more than human world, including technology. I don't think they're going to be afraid of any of the new kinds of proteins coming out. Like Nick mentioned, they love both plant proteins as well as animals, and they also love mushrooms, and they love high-tech foods. So it's a very different relationship to highly processed foods this generation is having, because they're not just thinking about better for them, they're thinking about impact and what is better for the world and for everyone else. Next slide. Well-functioning culture. So this is what they're seeking. They're just at the beginning of their work life. Like they said to me, we're at the starting line. Please don't tell me the world is at the end line. And what do they need most? They need mentoring. They need leadership to grow their agency and will. They are seeking well-functioning culture in community. And they want to contribute to something greater than themselves. They want to make impact, which is creativity. They told me it's really hard not to feel creative. This is Evelyn, and for Evelyn, Goyo Adoba has all the flavors of self-discovery. She told me, waste hurts. Waste is a resource out of place, and I am a resource determined to find my place. Just like babies learn how to walk and run, I'm determined to learn. That's what Evelyn told me. They're also craving nature, and while their language is much more in the practical world, they're craving natural light, being outdoors, they're craving hiking in the forest, and eating biodiversely. Ari told me, climate is a lot spicier than it used to be. And in fact, spicy is the sweet sauce for this generation between discomfort and growth. They're carrying hot sauce in their backpacks to make bland, no-change food a bit tastier. They are our hot sauce to wake us up to the changes that we need to make for this world. And they're also systems thinkers. They've been learning, as Nick said, from grade school that everything impacts, so impact everything. And food connects to everything. This is Olivia, a future food entrepreneur. We're just 1 year shy of seeing more Gen Zs starting their own companies. Olivia is rewriting menus and remaking worlds, and she wants us all to invest in the regenerative future. Roll video, please.
My boyfriend Christian considers himself a third culture kid because he is white American, but he grew up in Hong Kong. I'm not fully Chinese, I'm not fully American, so I'm this third version of it. I think Gen Z doesn't want to be swayed by promises on labels or like happy chickens on on the package. Like, we want to know that it's actually working. I think the responsibility is in the people sourcing ingredients, making products, and selling them to us to make sure that they are doing it in a responsible way at scale. If I am what I eat, then this is who I am. Starting on the sort of basis of health and just kind of what my body needs, I always have greens like spinach and spring mix. I love green peas for the pop of texture and sweetness, and then avocado, I'm just a fiend for it. I love the texture and what it adds to all these. If I'm doing any salad, stir fry, whatever, I have a tahini sauce with soy sauce and apple cider vinegar in it. I always go to honey for sweetness. This is regenerative sourcing of salt. And then trying to bring more of the ocean into my diet. So if I'm having seafood, which I started eating recently, I like tinned fish, and also trying to bring more seaweed into my diet. And then if I want like a starch, something a little bit more satisfying in that way, I love Banza chickpea pasta. And then this is an upcycled tomato sauce by Matriarch. This upcycled flour mix is great for baked goods. And then kombucha is a guilty pleasure. This is my attempt at regenerative diets.
Yeah, looks pretty yummy. They are our teachers of new ways. Blue is my story of love, of caring more, reconnecting deeply, and curing our separation. He is my story of regeneration. Roll video, please.
Yesterday, I went over to my friend's house, and she gave me a sourdough starter.
Oh.
And we like kneaded the bread.
Mm-hmm.
And then today, I'm baking it. I'm just trying to make the most out of the present moment. You can't really predict how things are going to change. Instead of planning out like a very specific life trajectory, just kind of go with what happens. Okay, I'm going to take the bread out now. It smells very baby bread. I don't know.
Uh-oh, okay.
It smells like bread.
What makes you want to take up space?
That desire to connect with other people, cooking for each other, being out.
What makes you want to space out?
I think feeling stuck. Sometimes I get tired. Yeah, like anxious or depressed.
How do you get unstuck?
I think meditation is spending time with friends, to give food to someone else. And then also for yourself, making sure you do a good job, make it tasty and healthy.
So cooking is a practice of caring more? Wow. What's the flavor of trust?
Savory. Savory seems more reliable.
What is the flavor of change?
Sour. Because when things decay, they turn sour.
I love you, Blue.
Love you too, Mom.
Was this okay?
Yeah, it's good.
Can you ask me a question? Ask me anything.
What's your salad dressing recipe?
So it took Blue and I 6 years to turn our relationship into one that is delicious and nourishing for both of us. I hope it takes you much earlier. I'm proposing an ethnographic diet, one that is about caring more, connecting deeper, and curing our myths of separation. This is actually what regenerative means to when I talk to a lot of consumers of all generations. That's sort of the essence of it. And currently it's a wide open signifier. And so can we keep it open for our Gen Z dreams and hopes? Gen Z are telling us they're just at the starting lines. How might we resource their future and their hopes? How might we resource the worlds they want to make? And I just want to thank all of you, because you are all here nourishing our modern hungers. This conference, New Hope, is truly what it's all about. And so thank you all for helping us to care more and create new stories that have kept us apart. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Amazing. I learned so much from that content, and it's been wonderful working with Junjo. So we now have one more section to our State of Natural and Organic. We do pack a lot into these sessions, and so because we want to provide you with the full context as you head onto the show floor. And so joining us for this panel, we've got Gabe Brown, who is the founder of Regenified, a North Dakota farmer, a pioneer of the regenerative ag movement, and the star of the new documentary, Common Ground. Welcome, Gabe. And we also have Caitlin Sakdalin, who is a content manager for Momofuku CPG brand and founder of the social influencer platform, Be Fat, Be Happy. So, first of all, Gabe, it's so wonderful to be on the stage. I keep telling him he's my hero, but he is. And so I've always wanted to meet you in person, so thank you for making the trip to be here. You're doing so much work around the world to spread the regenerative movement, so thank you. And agency and empowerment are two of the themes woven throughout this year's State of Natural and Organic. And so I wanted to, start our conversation with having each of you tell us more about yourself through the lens of where you currently source or provide agency and empowerment, either for yourself or for others. And Gabe, we'll start with you.
Well, thank you. It's great to be here today. I think in order to answer that question, we first have to take a look at what is regenerative agriculture, because that's the space that I've dealt with the past 30 plus years. And I defined regenerative agriculture as farming and ranching in synchrony with nature to repair, rebuild, revitalize, and restore ecosystem function, starting with all life in the soil and moving to all life above the soil. And why is that so important, and where is the focus of my work? Well, the focus is really using regenerative agriculture as a tool to find common ground for common good. I firmly believe that society today, we can agree on 85 to 90% of the issues. Well, what so often happens is we focus on those 10 to 15% of the things we don't agree on. Well, I think we should spin that. Let's focus on what we can agree on. And the one thing I know is that regenerative agriculture can help answer a lot of the issues we're seeing as a society today. For instance, climate change. Well, approximately 15 to 75% of the carbon that was once in our agricultural production soils is now in the atmosphere. Regenerative agriculture can pull that carbon out of the atmosphere and put it back into the soil, into the cycle where it belongs. Is your interest in clean air? Is it in water quality? Is it in water quantity? We can heal the small water cycle by using these time-tested ecological regenerative principles. Is your interest does it lie in profitability? Regenerative agriculture has 76% greater profitability for the farmer and rancher as compared to the current production model being used today. And then something that's near and dear to me and many of you here is that of human health. We are proving that using regenerative agriculture to heal our soils will then put more nutrients into our foods, and we'll have food that is higher in nutrient density, thus positively affecting our health. So let's find common ground for common good through regenerative agriculture. And every brand out here today can insist on sourcing regeneratively grown and raised products.
So true. Thank you, Gabe. Caitlin, tell us where you source agency and empowerment.
Yeah, of course. Thank you so much for having me. It's amazing to be among these amazing people and all of you. As Carlotta mentioned, I'm Caitlin, and I have a personal brand. It's called Be Fat, Be Happy. I started it when I was in college, and it was just meant to be this kind of visual archive of everywhere I was spending my money while on food and eating throughout college, and it really turned into kind of this passion project. As it grew kind of greater than my own personal passion project, I realized that FAT is an acronym for food and travel, kind of two universal connectors that make us happy. And so my main goal through the content that I share is really to bring others joy and encourage others to stay hungry, to feed their appetite, feed their soul, and feed others. And I live by those pillars. They empower me in everything that I share, whether that's about kind of supporting local businesses in the area that I live in, uplifting the Filipino community coming from a Filipino heritage background, and sharing stories around the AAPI community, like Jake from Philo Manila, who was mentioned earlier, or even just showcasing underrepresented cuisines, cultures, seasonal ingredients, things like that. It all really comes back to those three pillars for me. And in addition to Be Fat, Be Happy, I also work in brand and marketing in the CPG space. Specifically right now, I lead content and community at Momofuku Goods. And our mission really aims to redefine what the American pantry looks like and how we can make cooking more accessible, enjoyable, delicious. And having the responsibility of putting out content day to day, I really am quite intentional about that content being valuable so that people can try new recipes, try great ingredients, and just have fun and experiment in their kitchen. We talk about cooking as a source of comfort and joy, and so I'm very intentional about that. And then in the way that we build out that community that we're sharing content to, specifically, we have this influencer program, and I really am very intentional about building diversity in that program and giving agency and access to people from all walks of life that are sharing content. We all have to eat, we all have to cook, and so it's really about just bringing those goods to the masses.
Thank you. And June, Joe.
So you've seen a lot of my work already. I'm a food ethnographer. I work with companies as well as organizations to help them understand their users. And then my husband and I, we have a children's publishing company called Readers to Eaters. We publish children's books about food, and we work with WIC and Ag in the Classroom and a lot of teachers, librarians, educators. And so, you know, we're at Gen Z right now, but Zennials and then Gen Alpha, Zalpha, I think are coming next. So we have a commitment to understanding what the next generation wants to eat. And with my best friend, Kirsten, who's here, we have a R&D, research and development through art, called Kiki's Cocoa in Wonderland, and we are putting on immersive ethnographic pop-ups. And for this year, ours is called Restaurant on Mars. What would a Michelin restaurant on Mars serve? Yeah.
That's amazing. I hope it's regenerative.
Yes, it has to be.
Exactly, it has to be.
Yeah.
So let's talk more about Gen Z, and you gave us such a great grounding in some, just really amazing, powerful humans that you brought to us through your work. And as we talked about, Gen Z is rising into power. They're inheriting the opportunities and challenges that the generations that came before them have created. And June, Joe, from your research, you've shared a lot, but how does this generation, how would you describe how they're facing the future and how they might experience a concept like regenerative or a concept like equity?
Yeah, those are really, really big questions and tough. And so I'm just sort of channeling their language and their stories. If they focus on climate change and catastrophe, collapse, peak population, all of that, they can't move forward. I mean, I'm sort of stuck when I focus on that. So they are just trying to see step by step what they might do, how they might contribute. And one of the big areas is agrotech and sort of the new kinds of foods that can feed us in new kinds of ways. But really, it's through inclusion as the new diversity. So rather than using food to separate, I think our dietary lifestyles, you know, vegans, it takes you 7 seconds, all that, they are actually inclusive. And so they're not using food to disconnect, they're using food to bridge.
Yeah, it makes so much sense. And so Gabe, you know, what is your message for Gen Z? How are you passing the torch to this generation and other future generations? And what would you like to see from them?
Yeah, excellent question. Thank you for asking it. So I think it's important for Gen Z to realize that the current food production system, and I have to just say that I don't think we have food so much today as food-like substances. I think we got to get back to real food, that the current production model was driven by consumer choice. But just like that's a model we want to move away from, and I really get tired of the word sustainability. I have the good fortune, I'm on hundreds of farms and ranches all over the world every year. I have never, ever been on a single farm or ranch that's not degraded, including my own. Why do we want to sustain a degraded resource? That's absolutely ridiculous. Gen Z can't afford for that to happen. They have to demand through their buying power and through their knowledge and learning that we be regenerative, so that one day down the road, future generations may have the opportunity to be sustainable. You see, they have to understand really what's happening with the current food system. Do they understand that tillage is one of the worst things we can do for both for climate change and for the nutrient density of food? So all the brands out there are you sourcing food products that we're growing through a tilled system. For those Gen Zers who, and I'm glad there's more and more of them that produce their own food through gardens, do you realize that by tilling that garden, you're having a negative impact on your own health? You need to understand that. Knowledge is power, okay? Your buying dollar, your decision making is power. You can change this. Each and every one of you, Gen Z, can make a difference by insisting on sourcing regeneratively grown and raised products.
Yes. And so knowledge is power. And Caitlin, you're in the business of knowledge. You know, you're spreading information and sharing connections through your own personal social channel as well as with your brand, Momofuku. And and our research shows that Gen Z, of course, they're getting their information from social media to influence their buying decisions and their consumption habits and the issues they care about and engage with. And so what are the most creative and impactful ways to use social to inform and galvanize this generation?
Yeah, that's such a great question. I think when it comes to social media and really kind of bringing importance to these issues, it comes down to a combination of 3 C's: producing powerful content, kind of providing the correct context, and then the last thing is really engaging and building a powerful community. When it comes to the content piece of this, social media is truly such a big beast. It kind of feels like this engine that constantly needs to be fueled by creativity. And when we think about Gen Z and what they're watching, we've been seeing that a lot of this generation is attracted to video content that speaks to daily lived experiences. And I've seen that kind of the most powerful creators online really know how to strike a delicate balance by showcasing both the mundane, just kind of the day-to-day life that we can all relate to, and also the memorable to hook people in. right? And kind of keep people engaged, keep them coming back as you're kind of telling stories. And so being really thoughtful about the content that you're putting out. And then that second piece of context when you're thinking about it, right, is why should someone care about what I'm talking about? And just like really thinking, is my content worth someone's time? Because time is a commodity. And now more than ever before, with how kind of social media works, you have to hook someone in within just a few seconds. So like thinking about that overall context of time and energy, as well as what you're talking about and getting people to care about it. And then when you have those kind of two things in place, it can become really impactful. I think the most important piece is really building that community that we've been talking about, and I think June talked about in terms of like friend groups and building the people around you. Really the most important way to grow and galvanize a generation around these kind of social issues is getting them to talk about it themselves. So when you're providing this content, giving the context, and then empowering them to talk about it on your behalf, that's when you can really spearhead larger conversations versus just being in an echo chamber yourself. And so part of that is really, it's not just your creativity, but it's just being super connected and on the ground, whether it's responding to comments online or just messaging people, kind of collaborating with people that have shared values with you and doing it together. It was showed in the presentation, a lifting tide rises all boats, and that's just true of community and the way that we have to use social media.
A mini masterclass in how to use social media to move a generation. I love it. Well, before we adjourn, I wanted to ask each of you one closing question. And what's the one thing you would share with future generations? And Caitlin, we'll start with you.
I don't mean to be a broken record, but for me, it really all comes back to staying hungry to feeding your appetite with kind of the experiences that make life joyful in this long life, staying hungry to feed your soul, which for me means to continue to learn and grow, a process of life that should never stop, and staying hungry to feed others. I think about some of my greatest influences and the people that have molded me and made me into who I am and fed into my life, and I think it's our great privilege and responsibility to do the same.
Love it. Gabe.
So I really think that it's upon each and every one of us to make a difference. You know, I love what was shown here this morning. The young lady who through her actions took the bromine out of Gatorade. I think that's fantastic. Never underestimate the power that you can make as an individual. You know, I just challenge everyone, go make a difference. Do it through your buying dollar, where you source, demand of them that they source regeneratively grown and raised products. Start within your local household, and then you move to your local community. What about helping the local school systems? Demand that they source regeneratively grown and raised food. And then you take it from there and expand it. Every one of us can make a difference.
Yes. And June Jo.
Yes, so staying hungry, taking action, and I would like to contribute to this beautiful potluck, staying curious. Ask your own Gen Zs. What are the worlds they're making and making themselves ready for, and resource those worlds. Keep the hope alive.
Yes. Yeah. And I hope all of you are curious, and if you don't know a lot about regenerative agriculture, we are doing a film screening of the Common Ground movie that Gabe stars in. It's Friday at 4 o'clock, and I wanted to share just a quick trailer to get you inspired to be part of that.
I said this letter is a warning.
If the soil dies, we die.
So I'm gonna fight to save your future. Nature is the mother of us all. And if Mama ain't happy...
But there's a way to save our precious soils. It's called regeneration.
It is not just restoring the land to the state we found it, but actually making it better.
Can we mitigate climate change? Absolutely.
It's high time to finally get regenerative agriculture.
We can change everything. Therehope.
Let's get together before we get much older.
There is hope. hope, there is agency, there is empowerment in our amazing industry. I hope you have an amazing, amazing Expo West. And thank you to our panelists, and we will see you out on the show floor. Thank you.
That was amazing.
We're always chasing the next big win. Whether that's finding a product that will fly off store shelves, or you are the product flying off store shelves, the journey to success traces back to Expo West, where sun and fun meets getting business done, where 70,000 nice to meet yous turn into how could I have done this without you, where you can try the latest from brands you love and meet brands you've never heard of, track trends with your friends, catch a keynote, and then think to yourself, would I do it again? Oh yeah. The chase ends here. Empower your future at Expo West.